Hello, I hope you are doing great today. Thanks for joining. And of course, if you have, are you seeing my screen? I don't see. Okay, there it is. Was not seeing my screen. Hello, thanks for joining. And welcome to the channel. Today we are going to start working in the system configuration for the Blazor Restaurant project. And remember, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and invite more people so they can subscribe to and we can get more videos and we can make more videos for you. Please let us know in the comments where are you connecting from and things that you would like to learn about Blazor, .NET Core, Unity, Unity3d, and soon Maui too. Okay, so let's start. For the ones who have already seen or following the Blazor Restaurant series, you know that we are creating a small project in Blazor WebAssembly running at .NET 5, which is oriented to have restaurants such as Pizza Hut, Subway, Burger King, so they can create, they can show the website with the promotions and the products that they have, the menu items, right? And so that users can order the food online, right? And follow the delivery. So far, we have implemented the administration part and the users part in some parts of the system, right? We have the products, we have the promotions, we have the upload of images, some role verifications, right? It's connected using Azure Active Directory Business to Consumer, or ADB2C for short, right? And today we are going to work in this system configuration, right? So usually when you create an application in .NET Core, you will have a configuration either in your secrets.json, app settings.json, in the database, any environment variables, in any other type of configuration, right? Or sometimes you actually have it in Azure Key Vault too, right? In this case, the application is designed so it has some database-driven configuration, right? So today we are going to create the application that is going to set all of that information into the database. There is already some progress in there, right? So this is the database. Currently you will see two databases. There is one for test and there is the one that I am using for actually developing, right? So you will see that in the database we have a system configuration table which has it's a key value pair table, right? And it has a name where one is server start configuration, and it has a JSON structure into the values, which is going to correspond to the JSON structure to have all of the server configuration, except for the database connection string, because we need the database connection string to be able to insert the data, right? So one of the first things that you will do is, or I did, is I created another Blazor project in the solution, but this is a Blazor server project, right? You will see that it doesn't have client side, right? And it just has the default project template, right? With some small modifications, right? So in the index page, I modified, right? So it doesn't really have the default page, right? I modified to have the MAUI for the corresponding to the JSON structure that we are going to insert, right? The JSON structure is going to be something like this. So you will see that here I have the connection string. This one is connecting to my local database, right? And I have some blank or placeholders in there, right? So we can see the actual validation errors too. So there are a lot of things that we need to configure. In the administration portal, for example, there are 2 error logs, or 2 menu items for the error logs, or 2 pages for error logs. One is error logs retrieving directly from the database, right, through an API, and the API retrieves from the database, right? But there is also another page that uses Power BI based reports, and it just requests a URL for that report created in Power BI, right? Also, we need to configure the Azure Active Directory, business to consumer, the scope, and all that. This one is not in effect yet because this is for the client side, so this can be ignored at the moment. We have the data storage configuration. You know that, for example, when you are uploading images, we are using Azure Blob Storage to insert those images, right, to create them, to persist them, right? So we need to configure 2 things for the we need to configure a couple of things for the blob storage configuration, right? One is the data storage configuration, which it tells which is the container where we are going to insert the data, right? So we have the URL for the IMS container, and we have the IMS container name too, right? So you know that also this project is using the library that we developed. It's named pti.microservices.library, right? And it has a lot of services, or it makes easier the consumption of a lot of services, especially the ones from Azure, right? Because there's a lot of code we don't have to implement. Pretty much it's just configure and use it. Okay. There are also some more Azure specific configuration that we have to set, right? We have to set the configuration, the connection string for the Azure Blob storage, right? We have to set the key for the Azure Maps, right? And then we have to set the Azure Active Directory business to consumer information for the server application. Remember that when you are creating Blazor WebAssembly systems using Azure AD B2C, you actually create 2 applications in your Active Directory tenant, right? You have to create a server application, and you have to create a client application, which is going to authenticate to the server application just for consuming the APIs. Okay, so there is also something else that we did. Okay, so basically I created the index.razor.cs. So you may know by checking the project, and I have already mentioned this in the videos, I do not like to have the code in the Razor page. I don't like to have the add symbol code and all that in that page. I rather to have a .cs page because it makes the HTML much cleaner, right? I don't like to mix code in the same view, for example, let's say. Okay, so this is the model class, right? And if we go to this model class is kind of a wrapper for the JSON, right? So we have the connection string, right? The connection string maps to this connection string in here. We have the configuration data, which maps to this configuration data. And then we have the system configuration, which is this system configuration, right? Then we have the index.razor. And here you see that the thing that I did is, okay, we created the header, we put that it's Blazor Restaurant dash system configuration tool, whatever name you want to have in there, right? Then you do this object graph data annotation validator and put the validation summary. Now, you may have seen that usually in Blazor applications we use the data annotation validator, right? And that usually works pretty much fine. But the issue comes with when you have models, complex models. We have a lot of properties in a hierarchy, right? As you have seen this one, this model has, this is direct value, right? But we have this complex structure in here, and these complex structures have actually other complex structures, right? If we don't use this object graph data annotation validator, when you submit, it will only validate the properties that are directly in the model and not the ones in the objects in the hierarchy, right? But besides having this data annotation, you have to do a couple of things. Well, first, in order to be able to use that annotation, you have to install a NuGet package, which is currently in preview, and is this one, Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components Data Annotations Validator, right? Validation. And it's in preview, so you need to make sure that when you install it, the include pre-release is selected or marked, right? Then you need to go to your model, and on each of the sub-properties that you want to be validated, you need to mark them with validate complex type. You see that this is actually through all of the complex types, right? Because I want that to validate everything, right? Okay, so that's it for that. Now if I run the application, you see that this is the application, right? I haven't cleaned the default template, but you see that in the form we already have a base form. It is not complete yet, but we have a section for the connection string. We have a section for the Azure AD server application configuration, right? Which is in here, client ID, domain, instance, sign up, sign in policy ID. We have the Azure Blob storage configuration. And one of the things that I implemented in here too is being able to import from the JSON file, because usually you don't want to input all of that configuration manually, right? Now if I go and click submit in here, you will see that I get these validation errors because some of the properties, for example, the authority, the error log power BI URL, the client Azure scope, and the IMAS container URL must be URLs, right? But they are not. As you may have noticed in the secrets.json, I purposely add them with incorrect values in here, so I will get the validation errors. Okay. Now we are going to continue creating the form. So far we are in the connection string for the Azure Blob storage configuration. So let's see what else we have in here. Well, let's create actually this is for Azure configuration, this is for Azure Blob Storage configuration, right? We have the maps too, so let's see. I am going to create another class, another card in here, card header, and this is going to be, let's see which is the next one. I believe it's the Azure Maps, yeah. Azure configuration, Azure Maps configuration, yes. So Azure Maps configuration. By the way, this is one way to do it, right? But the more configuration that you need in your system, the more tedious it is to create your forms, right? There are ways to dynamically create your forms in Blazor, right, or in Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor Server, that we are actually going to see in some of the videos in the future, right? But for now, this is going to be the way, so you have an easy way to configure the application, right? Okay, and here we are going to have this, and we are going to set the Azure Maps key. If I think it's going to be a form label, input text, this is going to be a form control, and we are going to bind the value to, I'm going to put this down here, we are going to bind the value to this.model configuration data, Azure configuration, Azure Maps configuration key. Okay, and that will be pretty much it for the Azure Maps configuration, and I believe it's also everything for the Azure configuration per se too. Let's see, Azure configuration has Azure Blob Storage and Azure Maps configuration, which we already configured both, right? Or set the form for those, right? And next to the Azure configuration, we have Azure AD B2C, which was already in there. So let's see what we have. Let's actually do this. Let's move this down here. So error messages, success message, database configuration, which is the connection string, that's in there, right? Then we have the Azure AD app service configuration. Then actually, yes, configuration data, data storage, already configured it. And the microservices configuration, I don't have it yet. So let's go to the microservices. Actually, let's do the error log Power BI URL. Actually, I need it, and that's going to be under the system configuration. Okay, It's going to be the next thing after the connection string, so I have it in the same order. So database configuration. Yeah, this is the other card. Should be, yeah, okay. So this is going to be a card class. I'm going to put this as a section. So the configuration data, I'm going to put it in here, configuration data. The class card header. I'm sorry, card body. And oh no, yes, actually MB3 label class form, sorry, form label, form label, is model configuration data, system configuration. Shall I name it system configuration? So this is the system configuration, and error log Power BI URL. That's what I'm going to put as the header in here. Error log Power BI URL, and let's see. Now I am going to create input text class equals form control, and I'm going to find the value to the property that it belongs to, which is going to be the base one, right? And now we are able to see it. Okay, I mentioned that this we are not going to use them. This one we are. And let's see what else we have. System configuration only had that, right? So that will be everything for the system configuration card, right? So let's see, system configuration model, configuration data. We already went to the system configuration. Then the data storage configuration. I have it. It was over here if I remember. Let's see, Azure configuration. Azure blob storage configuration, but this is the blob storage configuration. Now I need the data storage. Okay, because that's the one that has the container name and all that. So this one was for system configuration, but now I want to have a card for the data storage configuration, which are a little bit different. I didn't want to mix the configuration from the PTI services with the configuration for the data storage in the application, which is the one that has the container name and all that. Data storage configuration. We create a body for the card. Let's just create. Now I'm not a UI expert, so this is just pretty basic, but we can do this. This can be done. We can have a much better UI, right? But that's not my strength. It's mostly architecture and backend. So let's see, data storage configuration, and we are going to use the container name and the container URL, I think. Yes, IMS container name and the IMS container URL. So label, class, from label, images container name, input, text, class, form control, going to go one line down, and I'm going to bind that to data source configuration, IMS container name. And I am going to copy this. I'll change this to the one with the IMS container URL, and now I'll change this to images container URL. Okay, and that will be pretty much for those. Microservices configuration, I don't think it's actually in here. So I'll create another card. Which is going to have a label, model configuration data storage configure, no, sorry, this one. And what it's going to have is the Rapid API key. Rapid API key. Input text class equals form dash control, and we are going to bind the value to that property, Rapid API key. So Rapid API is already configured. That's the only thing that this one had, right? And now let's see, it goes to the Azure configuration, which we already have it configured down here. That's this section. And then the Azure AD B2C configuration, which should actually be at the end of this. Azure AD Server APP configuration, Azure configuration. I don't think I actually configured the B2C. No, I don't have it yet. So let's create that card too. class card, card header. Now Azure AD B2C. Yeah, this is see server app configuration, div class card header, sorry, card body, div class embedded as 3, label class from label this model dot configuration data Azure AD B2C client ID domain. Let's go to client ID, right? Input text class form dash control bind value equals the client ID. Now we go for the others. The next one is going to be domain, so change this. Let's copy this. This one now it's going to be the instance, and this one is going to be, yes, I think I may have that duplicated, so let's just see. Let's run the application and let's see how that ends up. I think that's duplicated. Okay, so I have an error in here. It says object reference not set on instance of an object, type up render server rendered. There might be an error somewhere around here. Let's open all of this and let me check. Yes, I have this in here. I have it twice, so might have been that. Okay, let's run it. Okay, so there is an error. Okay, there is also this. I had changed the validations. Why? Let's see. View details. It it says doesn't really give me a lot of information where it may be failing. Object reference not set on instance of an object. So this is the index page. And when it tries to load this page, let's see, it should be something in this one. One of these objects might be null for any reason. So let's see, this one is not null, all of those are actually being initialized. This one is being initialized. Those do not need to be initialized. But let's just restart this just in case. I'm not really sure why that's happening, so let's check it. Try to run it again just to see if it was some Visual Studio weird error. Otherwise, it may be some of the properties being accessed being null. So let's comment that for a second, and that should actually be the one that it should work. So we'll see that it's something in the form if that works. Okay, so yeah, it's one of the properties in here that may be failing. Error message, success message, no. Model.connection string. Configuration, data system configuration. Actually, let's see if I'd reached the breakpoint and we can check. Okay, so let's see if any of these values is null at the moment. Connection string, that's null, but that's not a complex property, so it shouldn't really matter. Those are not complex properties, should not matter either. Not a complex. So shouldn't have any issues in there. Object reference not set on instance of an object. But which one I have no idea. Well, let's just do this. If this dot model not equals null, render the form. Otherwise, do not even try it. Nope. Okay, so let's see. It has to be one of the items that I hadn't used before, so one of these might be. Let's comment the data storage configuration. Actually, let's just check the whole form. Let's see, model connection string, system configuration error log Power BI URL, data storage configuration, training name, URL, Rapid API key, connection string, key, client ID, domain instance. Not really sure. No, this shouldn't matter. Oh, that's it. I think. Value. I think so. Let's just verify. Okay. So yeah, I had that value misspelling there. I didn't. I put bind dot and I forgot to put the value part. So let's see. I don't have anything commented anymore, right? No. So yeah, now we can go. We import the JSON from the file which I copied before, which is this one, for example, and you see that we have all of that information in there. Now if I go and hit submit, in this case I am going to get these errors, right? So I'm going to go and I am going to go and verify it. Actually, let's delete this one. Let's make this be this original again. Let's refresh the file. And let's fix these URLs in here. I'm not going to put the correct URLs, just some samples, some URL dot test. I thought it is also HTTPS some URL dot test. This one should also be okay. Connection string, instance URL. In theory, those should be okay now, and I should be able to hit this breakpoint already, unless I have any other issue in there. Let's see. So I import the file, secrets.json, then I submit it. There's still an issue somewhere. The scope and the images container URL are not in the correct format. The scope, oh yes, this one. Some URL test, and yeah, I put an extra T in there. Okay. Now if I go secrets.json, submit, I come in here. Now it validates if we can connect to the database. I was able to connect to the database, otherwise I will have gotten this error, right? And there are a couple of other validations that we need to do. For example, since I get this model, I could just go and insert that in the database, but you may have noticed that I actually input wrong values on purpose, right? So that will fail when I configure everything, right? But just to insert the data, we are going to continue with this. So I was already able to connect to the database, right? Now system string system configuration JSON is going to be equals to JSON serializer from system.next serialize, and I am going to serialize model configuration data system configuration. That's the one I actually know. This one. Okay, and now I'll go to var system configuration entity equals await this. No, it's not this. Await. Actually, here I do not need to do await or anything like that. It's not really that of a problem for user configuration tool. System configuration singular default. Where the name of the key equals server configuration, right? And let's see. System configuration entity does not equal null. The only thing that I am going to do is system configuration.update. I'll pass the entity as it is. Actually, I need to map the values. I forgot I had to do that. So in order to be able to do this quick, we are going to go here, go to edit the project file, which I do not see. Edit. Here it is. And we are going to import the automapper dependency injection for automapper. Oh, so yeah, it's this one. Okay. Now I'll go here, delete this file. I can just add it in the other through the NuGet package, right? It's pretty much the same. Now the other thing that I want to do is I'll create something like this. Actually, have the mapper profiles, right? I'll just use the same name, global mapping profile. I'm doing this just in case the application needs to be extended with more mapping things. It's going to inherit from profile. Let's do the using in there. And in the constructor, we are going to do this create map from actually I do not need to do that, I think. Yeah, I don't need it, I'm sorry. So if the system configuration is not equal null, then system configuration entity that value actually if it equals null, system configuration dot entity equals new. server start configuration key. I want to create a constant in there. Server start configuration key. Okay. And then system configuration entity dot value equals system configuration Json. And I don't think we need this one actually. This yes we need sorry, system configuration entity equals null. We create the entity and we do not need that. Actually, let's do it in here. Blazor system configuration dot add new name equals server start and the value equals the Json system configuration Json, right? If it's not equal to null, we are just going to update. And we'll do the save changes. And there are a couple of errors. You don't need to do the mapping in this case, so I'm actually just going to delete that. You know we were going to need it, but we don't. So let's see how that goes. We should see in this local, oh, there's something I haven't done first. So this local database I just created it earlier, and it doesn't have tables nor anything. So one of the things that I need to do is I need to go to the database project and I need to tell it publish, or I'll do a schema compare. I'll just do a schema compare. Select target. I'll add a new one. Local. This one is with Windows authentication, so should be fast. I mean, I don't have to authenticate because it's using Windows authentication. So those are all of the tables in there. I'll just going to update it. I'm doing this because the publishing script may not work because I haven't really tested it. But the publishing script is the one that which also has some logic to insert the base data that we need in the database. Okay, but it already created tables, so if I go to the database and I refresh this database, I should be able to see the tables in here. And if I go to system configuration, we should see this one is empty, right? So if I go now, run the application, and I try to insert the data, it should in theory work. Secrets.json, write all of the test data in there, submit. Now let's see, it tries to connect to the database, right? It was able to connect to the database, then it retrieves or converts this to a JSON, and you will see that in here we have this JSON which has system configuration, error log, Power BI, and all that, which is similar to the one we already had for the main database, right? It checks in the database if there is an entity with that key. There is not, right? If there is not an entity with that key, we just add it and we save the changes. When we save the changes, we can go back in here, and you see that now we have that data. Now if we want to update the information in there, test 1 2 3 or something like that, right? Submit. Now we follow the flow, tries to connect. It should find an entity with that key, so it should just update it, save the changes, right? And it tells us that everything succeeded, right? Configuration is safe. You should now be able to run this system. And this is the base for the configuration tool. Of course, this is just a base. There are a lot of missing validations, but this makes it way easier to configure the system, right? Because you have a panel when you can go and input all of your information, right? And if for some reason the information is incorrect or something is not working, you just can go to this application and put the actual connection string and modify the information. Also, if you saw, you can also import the configuration from a JSON file, which helps you to make everything way easier. I hope this has been useful and that it actually allows you to configure the Blazor Restaurant system in a way easier manner. Thank you very much and have a great day. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and invite more people so they subscribe and I can keep making more trainings for you.